For over a decade, she has launched and scaled multiple products in the mobile and SaaS space. She was an entrepreneur in the past, built Viral Tricks, a plug and play SDK that makes it easy for marketing and product teams to add referrals and other viral hacks into mobile apps from a dashboard with minimal involvement from their engineering team. As of recently, she was heading the engineering team for an edtech product company where she built their first SDK based reader product. And if you have a white labeled product and going through pains of customization requests that leads to custom code or branching, bugs, and increased time or effort, you may reach out to Bhavna Muralidharan. She loves solving some of the toughest challenges. And when she is not talking about product or engineering, which is her core niche, she also loves to read, crochet, play squash, and listen to Metallica. Interesting. In today's episode, let's learn more about SDKs, software development kits, and Bhavna's journey building SDK based products. Hello, this is the Guiding Voice podcast series, TGV for a better future. This podcast is to help professional students, IT employees, and entrepreneurs to shape their careers. Folks, if you haven't rated our podcast on Apple, request you to provide your rating and leave your candid review. Every rating and review will motivate us to bring in more and more useful content to you. If there is a constructive feedback, it will be taken with right spirit and you will see us grow. This is your host Naveen Samala, and I have about 18 years of rich and diversified experience in the IT industry. And in every episode, we interact with industry experts or thought leaders or academicians or coaches across the globe to drive some insightful conversations that will help each one of you learn some amazing things. Also, we share an interesting trivia or a fun fact towards the end. And folks, you will acquire more knowledge per every minute through TGV than any other podcast in this space. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we are pleased to have Bhavna Muralidharan, part of TGV's journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Bhavna, welcome to TGV.
Hi, Naveen. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
It is a pleasure hosting you, Bhavna. Can we talk briefly about your career journey and maybe top three things that have helped you so far?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career as a mobile app developer much before it was common. So I got a very early start into the space. And I also got the opportunity to work with mobile manufacturers, OEMs like Motorola, as part of their software team that builds pre-built or preloaded apps that come with a mobile phone. So I got to be part of that journey or programs where multiple cross-functional teams come together to ship a mobile phone. That gave me a lot of sense about the mobile space, the various architectures in the mobile space, and also program management. One of the things that I also got to do a lot was people management. Very early in my career, I was given opportunity to lead a team, manage a client at client location. So that gave me opportunity to build people skills, client management skills. But one of the things I always wanted to do was keep an edge in the technology space, which led me build augmented reality apps in 2010, and then big data product in the mobile space. Essentially, you can say I was in love with the mobile space by the time it became a boom. Fast forward 2014, I started up on my own. A B2C app is what I started with, which ultimately pivoted into a B2B SDK based product. And that experience taught me a lot about product management, UI, UX, and what really adding value to a customer means. Fast forward to now, I've built multiple engineering teams, shipped multiple SaaS products, and I love to be at the integration of product, engineering, and business. So a couple of things that helped me in the journey. One is that being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I always try to put myself in situations that I've not been there before. So it's super uncomfortable, but I try to take it as a challenge and a learning opportunity. The second one is taking risk. And over a period of time, I have learned to look at the failures that at times come with it as learning opportunities again. And third one is doubling down on my strengths versus spending time trying to overcome my weaknesses. So these have helped me a lot in my journey.
Seems to be a phenomenal journey. Like you have been at the core of the technology and the business process right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And one thing which resonates with me, is about the mobile development. Of course, I didn't develop the mobile-based apps, okay, which are the native apps, but in way back in 2009, when iOS and Android
Android.
were at its infancy, right? We developed a mobile web app, okay, keeping in view or benchmarking with eBay and Continental Airlines, Southwest Airlines in the States and all.
Nice.
And we built one and which worked on more than 100 devices. And I still cherish those moments.
Yeah. I'm sure you will. Yeah. Nice.
Absolutely. All right. Now, Bhavna, let's talk about today's core topic, the software development kits. So how do we talk about them in general, like so that anybody can understand?
Yeah. So SDK stand for Software Development Kit. Essentially, in a very large sort of generalized way to say is that it's a collection of tools like bunch of libraries or frameworks, APIs, sometimes debugger and even compilers, which are kind of packaged into a single installable file. And these are built specific for a platform or a OS. So for example, an Android app will use an Android SDK, which is a .r file. iOS would be a .framework file, and so on. Typically, the best SDKs come with documentation, which tells you how to integrate it, how to initialize it, how to use it, and sample codes which kind of showcase the same. Now, SDKs could be built to target front-end applications, in which case it's called a client-side SDK, or it could be for the server backend application, in which case it's called a server-side SDK. So this is a very large explanation, but typically that's what an SDK stands for, and there's a lot of scope which we can talk about later.
Wow. It reminds me of my Java programming days, the Java SDK and the JRE that we
Yes,
install and it.
yes.
Awesome. All right. So now let's talk about where and how they are used.
So SDKs have evolved a lot during the space. As you said, some of the early ones is like JDK, right? You build things on top of it. It's kind of like a platform. The same was the case when Android came into picture and iOS. Android SDK, platform SDK, or the tools and the iOS is essentially helping you give that platform on top of which you build stuff. But over a period of time, there's this other set of SDKs that have come into picture, which you will embed inside your application. So these SDKs help you extend the functionality of your application to meet one or more business use cases. So for example, if you want, your app wants a payment facility, then you may choose to use Stripe SDK. Or you want to build push notification, then you would include one of the SDKs from the numerous SDK providers that are there. You would write few lines of code to initialize it, do some configuration, and then you're done. The SDK takes care of it. So essentially what it helps to do is the development team need not spend time writing it from scratch. They can use something ready to use, which takes care of the entire life cycle. Now, to give you an example of a medium complex case, just so that you understand the breadth of it, assume you have an application which shows bunch of content, audio, video, but also things like EPUB, which is an ebook format, and audiobook, etc. Now, once the user clicks, you're supposed to show them in this player with all the controls and stuff. For audio video, you'll get it out of the box. But when it comes to things like EPUB and audiobook, it's a protocol. And you will have to invest time in studying the protocol, the business rules, then extracting it, displaying it, showing all the controls, saving. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And then you have to build it, maintain it, and evolve it. So one option is to do that. The other option is to use a ready-made SDK out there, like the one that I built, plug it into the app, pass the path to the content, and then launch it. And the SDK takes care of showing the entire content, saving data, retrieving data, all of it, right? So in that sense, this SDK is now a significant chunk of your app in terms of user experience, the UI screen, and the functionalities that it's going to enable in your application. So really, SDK is from simple to really complex use cases.
That seems to be a bunch of work.
Yeah.
And Bhavna, recently we interviewed another expert from the industry and spoke about this API world, right? So API, application programming interface, if I
Yeah.
remember it correctly, and web APIs are something which have become very popular. Now, how these SDKs are different from APIs?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think a lot of people get confused between APIs, libraries, and SDK. So let's tackle library first, because I think it's very close to get confused. So library is essentially a reusable chunk of code that performs one specific function or related function. So for example, a math library would help you do all math related operations, or a date time library would allow you to do everything related to date time, including locale, display, formatting, stuff like that. An SDK, on the other hand, is like a kit. It's basically giving you end-to-end resources and end-to-end code, which takes care of an entire feature or more features. So it's enabling business use cases for you and not just some part of your code. Now, when you compare it with API, there can be a lot of confusion because there are many types of APIs. So as you said, the web services, HTTP APIs is one, right? But in the context of SDK, APIs is not SDK. In fact, SDK contains APIs. It will at least have one or more APIs. And in the context of an SDK and API, the generic, basically an API is an interface between two pieces of software. And in the SDK world, the two pieces is the code that is using the SDK and the SDK itself. It's a way in which these two are communicating with each other. So that's what is an API. So SDK contains API. Now, while I mentioned that, I should also mention that the SDK internally could end up using REST APIs. For example, in the book example that I gave before, an API between the code and the SDK would be, for example, initializing the SDK, creating the book object by passing a path to the EPUB, and then launching the book when the user clicks it. But a REST API example, which the API, the SDK would internally use is, say, for example, the user created notes or highlight, and you want to save it on the server, the SDK internally would make those REST API calls and save it on the server. So the host app does not have to do anything. I hope that clarifies the confusing aspects of these.
Absolutely, because I was an avid reader on Kindle when I used to download these EPUB files and all, and now it is very clear in terms of how this highlighting the notes happen and everything. So that was great, extraordinary. And you have been building a bunch of SDKs, right, over a period of time. So what excites you about it?
Yeah, so that's a good question because many a times, see, most software developers would end up consuming one or more frameworks like Angular or in backend Django or Spring. So they are consuming something that somebody has architected. SDK is another opportunity to actually build a sort of similar to frameworks, where you build something that somebody else uses and builds on top of it. They can build total custom applications, or they could just use it out of the box. Essentially, it's another way where you can build frameworks, but you have a lot more access or a lot more opportunities to do that, because the other set of frameworks which I mentioned would be fewer in number. So fewer number of developers get to do that. But in SDK space, it's really growing. A lot of SDKs out there. So you get to do the exact same thing in a different way. And I think for me, especially, SDK becomes more interesting when there are customization challenges versus something which is more than plug and play. So assume you, like the reader application, everyone wants to customize it left and right and it to look different. And the whole idea with the SDK is I have this one piece of code and I should make this one piece of code work for all these use cases without writing custom code, which is just for one or two use cases, right? You want to spread your effort and cost. And those give the most challenging problems. And I really love that about the SDK space.
I can sense that passion out of it when each and every word that is coming out of you, right? That speaks volumes about it. Now, again, going back to my very limited knowledge of technology these days and all. So when we developed this mobile web application, we had certain criteria, be it like it should not have a script, JavaScript kind of thing, and you should perform only server-side validation, and you should follow strong or strict HTML kind of thing. Likewise, when you are building this when you are building these SDKs, do you have any criteria to meet?
Yeah, there are. And it's a very important topic as far as SDK is concerned, because I'll take the case of the majority, which I said is where the SDK is getting embedded into a host application. So what it means is your SDK can positively or negatively impact the host app, and the user is only going to look at the host app, right? They don't know there's an SDK internally. So it is very critical to follow some principles and be cognizant of some of the takeoffs in the SDK, trade-offs in the SDK. So I'll talk more about the client side just because it's a user, fronting part of it. So first and foremost, the footprint. SDKs and mobile app these days, the size of the app is, very critical factor, and your SDK should not impact or increase the size of the app more than what is acceptable. So you have to really try to optimize the size of the SDK. Even for web also, even though web SDK is getting fetched from a server instead of getting packaged into mobile, if the SDK is really heavy, the time it's taking to fetch it can negatively impact the user experience on the browser. So it's very important. The second one is battery and network usage. You have to be really cautious about how much data to fetch, how much data to send, because you shouldn't overload the network. There could be cases where you're operating in low network, so you have to be optimized for it. And you should be very careful about the battery that your SDK is consuming in terms of background threads that are running or any operations that can negatively affect it. What you need to remember is your SDK can be dropped if you're going to impact any of these areas, negatively on the host application. That's a good way to get out of the app, actually. The third one, which is more important for the provider of the SDK than the developer, is the security of your SDK. So most SaaS products, the SDK is licensed, so it's your intellectual property, and you have to make sure that it is being used in an authorized way. So apart from a normal obfuscation that you do of the SDK, you need to have the first step of using the SDK is initialization, where you check for the client key and optionally the application key. So you talk to your server and say, hey, is this client still authorized to use my SDK? Yes, great, go ahead. Otherwise, all your API, subsequent API calls is going to fail, and you show the error message. Coming to the error message, another very important thing is debugger and logging. Your developer, for the developer using your SDK is like a black box. They don't know anything what's happening inside. The only way they can know something is going wrong is by the error codes that you give back, the logs that you throw in the in the debugger view, and so on. So it's very critical that you do a good job at that. And also, some critical logs, try to get it to your server. Of course, you take care of security and privacy and all of that, but if you have these critical logs on the server, you can troubleshoot, your team can troubleshoot any on-field issues, anything that's happening on a customer phone and you don't have access to it. The other one that comes to mind is parity between coding standards specific to a platform. So you should stick to the naming conventions, the way the APIs are defined, the way the classes are defined, how they are used, design patterns used, so that your developer feels that it's an extension of the platform they're already used to using. They shouldn't have to, learn that again. And between two SDKs of different platform, maintain a parity in the names of the APIs and so on, just so that it seems familiar. The last one that I want to mention is app updates. So as you mentioned, Naveen, that you had to decide what will be done by server versus what will be done locally on the app. App updates for mobile is absolutely expensive. The user may decide not to update, and you have this critical bug that you want to fix on your app, right? So it's very important that you think about this much early while designing it, to decide what all could you influence from a server, so that ever the situation comes, you have much more control in rectifying the error versus being totally, having no control at all. So these are some of the top ones that come to my mind. Not a conclusive list, it's a huge list, but these are some of the top ones.
Wonderful, Bhavna. This made me nostalgic, going back, taking me back to my good old coding days and all. And recently, we also tried to develop one application on iOS as well as Android platform, and we were going through certain guidelines. They have mentioned that safety, performance, business, design, and legal are important. So I think you covered majority of the aspects, okay, which are in line with this, right? So that's an exciting stuff. I think a lot to learn from you, and I'm sure this will be of huge benefit to all the audience listening out this show. And now let's talk about the evolution of these SDKs and what are the trends. Can you talk briefly about both the past as well as what the future seems to be?
Yeah, so as I said, early versions of SDKs were these huge platforms, right, which help you build on top of it. But what the SaaS economy did was it gave rise to all these multiple SDKs which go inside your application and really help you extend the functionality. So right now, this space is huge in itself. If you look at any B2B or B2B to C, startups or SaaS products, they are getting into SDK if not already there. And that's because that's the way they can scale beyond their current customer base, and also give a lot of flexibility for their customers to build on top of it without the company, the startup being directly involved. So it's a huge market now, the way I look at it. Some of the interesting trends are one of the trend is that consolidation of SDKs. So earlier SDKs used to have like all the features in it, and now they are kind of breaking it up so that users can choose and pick which SDK to use. For example, AWS, I can think of their early two versions, I believe, had SDK where if you wanted to talk to all the AWS services, you can use AWS SDK, and essentially the first two versions had all the services in it, even if you're not using it. From the later versions, they actually made it modular and making it possible for the apps to just pick the SDKs which they want to, the components that they want to talk to. So it reduced the size. The other one that basically in the SDK space I can see is SDKs that are basically wrapper on top of some web services calls. Simple as that. So a lot of these API based products, the API economy, right? A lot of products are API driven. And what the developer had to do was not only call these APIs, but take care of the life cycle, doing the best practices. So essentially it's learning all of that and then implementing it. Later on, what these companies started to do is introduce their SDK. They encourage them to use their SDK instead of calling the APIs directly, just because these companies knew best what to do, how to do it. They could take care of things like authentication, security, and all inside the SDK, and the developer doesn't have to do any of it, right? There are platforms like Swagger, for example, which will let you, which will programmatically generate SDKs for your open API specification. You don't even have to write it. For Square, for instance, uses that. So that's another trend. The third one is the rise of vertical SDKs. What I mean by horizontal and vertical SDKs is that there are some SDKs which solve a core requirement which is really common for every application. Any type of app, you would need that. For example, analytics, push notifications. These are required for every app, A/B testing, attribution, and so on. But there are these other SDKs which are solving some core feature requirements. So for example, Salesforce SDK or the Reader SDK that I mentioned, even like chat and payment and all are kind of fulfilling a specific requirement that maybe not be common. So this vertical SDK is now really blowing up. Earlier, it was the horizontal, which was very common. Now this vertical is coming up, and it's really exciting to see that almost everything these days are driven by an SDK. If even APIs are now driven by SDK, so that's interesting.
Engrossing stuff. So Bhavana, what if someone is willing to pursue their career in these SDKs? What are some of the prospects? How can someone learn and build SDKs? Can you shed some light around it?
Yeah. Some of the recent reports about mobile usage and SDK indicate that on an average, mobile application especially contains from 15 to 18 SDKs. They are using that many. So depending on normal to a gaming application, it could vary. And as I said, I'm seeing every other product having an SDK. So the market is really huge. And as I said, it's an opportunity for you to build a framework which many other developers will end up using. So it's very gratifying as well. If you want to get into the SDK space, I would say the best way to start learning is to first look at documentation of some famous SDKs which are out there, because the documentation will tell you about the APIs and the way the SDK is initialized and used and all. So that will give you the first level understanding. Then go and look at some open source SDKs. Unfortunately, since most of the SaaS products are licensed, you won't find a lot of open source SDK, but there are enough. If you Google, you will find there are enough SDKs. So start with the ones which are simple. so when you start with them, you'll see some common patterns. You'll see what are some of the interface files look like, what are the internal classes look like, what configurations they allow, and so on. Once you get a hang of it, take a little medium complex SDK where there is UI also being shown. So client facing SDKs can have UI or may not have a UI, but choose one which has UI, which has customization and things like that. So doing that, you will actually go through the entire breadth and depth of an SDK and learn how SDKs are architected and have a better understanding about it. So then you can start your career, build something on the side as well, just a small something to kind of showcase your skill.
Wow, spellbinding conversation so far. So, Bhavna, let's add some spice to the episode. I would
Sure.
like to ask you a few interesting rapid fire questions if you are okay.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So, before I ask the first question, here is a guidelines. Maybe please try to keep it as crisp as possible. That's why it is called rapid fire. So, with that,
Yeah, I'll try.
let me.
I can't promise.
You will make it. All right. So, let me fire the first bullet out of the rapid fire. Time travel to past or future.
Definitely future.
Same with me.
Yeah, past is known, future is completely unknown. So I would love to see what it looks like.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next one. Given a chance, which celebrity would you like to meet?
Well, I would say Sarah Blakely, but she's not really a celebrity in the traditional sense. She is the first self-made female billionaire in 2012, I think, and she owned 100% of her company until a few weeks back. So.
No, awesome. Wish you all the best. All right. So moving on to my next one. What is a hidden talent that no one knows about you, Bhavana?
It's not hidden now, but a little unknown fact about me is that I can do miniature sculpting. I started with doing it on fondant, that is the ones that you use on cake. So make miniatures for cake and then progress to clay.
Wow, very interesting. All right, let's move on. Money or fame, and why?
That's a tough one, and I can't answer that in one. If it had been versus happiness, it would have been easy to say. I think for me, both are a way to positively impact my loved ones and the society in terms of the causes I'm passionate about. So, whatever gives me more influence in doing that is what I'll choose. In my head, I think fame leads ultimately to money if you do it right. So, I'll choose fame because of that.
Interesting. Okay, let me fire the last bullet out of the rapid fire. What is one message that you would like to give to your own younger version?
Yeah. It's a message I still give to me, and I would definitely do to my previous or younger version is how to handle worry and stress. There's a rhyme. It's called Mother Goose rhyme. What it essentially boils down to is that when you're worrying or you're stressed, if you can do something about the situation, then go and do it. But if there's nothing you can do about it, then why fret it? I think it's very critical in today's age and date when mental health and handling stress is important.
I completely concur with you. I resonate because if you keep worrying about things that we can't control, there is no point in doing it.
Exactly. You go
Absolutely.
into paralysis. You kind of damage your relationship, your productivity even. And I think this message just reminds me that all you have in your hand is things you can control, and that's what you should act on and focus on.
Wonderful. So that was a very engaging rapid fire. With that, let me go back to the mainstream and ask you one final question for this conversation today. What will be your one piece of advice to those aspiring to make big in their careers?
Okay. More than one piece, just because I think there are 2-3 things which are critical. So one, I would say take risk as early as possible because most likely the stakes are going to be low, but your learnings are going to be tremendous. So give yourself that opportunity and push your boundaries. Even if you feel you will not succeed, push it because that's the only way you can set up yourself for success. Because when you fail a couple of times, then you succeed a couple of times, bunch of times too. From a technical standpoint, I would say have your fundamentals really strong and be curious about how things are built, the architecture, the design, why did they build it like this and not that way, and try to find patterns between different languages or platforms, frameworks, because one of the things with technology is it's changing always. It's constantly changing, and you have to be flexible to adapt. And doing this makes you ready because you don't worry about new tech. You just look at patterns, you use your previous experience, and that gives you a leg up while learning new technology and building stuff.
Wow, simply captivating. So, Bhavna, thank you so much for joining us today. And it was great to talk about SDKs. It was
Yeah.
wonderful conversation. I'm sure everyone will enjoy this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's, as you said, it's a passion of mine. And whenever I'm talking about it, I get fully engrossed and I don't come to know that the time has passed. So it was super engaging. And thanks again for having me and sharing my knowledge on SDK, Naveen.
Pleasure hosting you, Bhavna. All right, so folks, before we move into trivia section, here is a request to all of you. If you have loved this episode just like I did, and if you have found it useful, please share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who can benefit from this show. Because the more you share, the wider we reach and we get closer to our mission of reaching millions across the globe. Thank you so much in advance. So now let's hop on to the trivia segment of today's episode. Since we spoke about software development kit, right, the SDKs, let us again talk about a trivia related to software. So do you know which softwares fall under productivity software? I know you are thinking, but let me tell you, Microsoft PowerPoint, Adobe Photoshop, Apple GarageBand, Canva, there are so many tools which are helping us be productive, which are saving us a lot of time. Those are all falling under the category of productivity software. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you so much for tuning in. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Take care. Be safe. Until next time, bye bye. And we are signing off for today. See you all in the next episode with another wonderful guest.